Hi everyone. Don't tell the lion that it's a sheep. That is the title of this section. And I will be talking about the importance of how much attention you're giving and the way you're acknowledging yourself. Because you see, we are all different people which are seeing similarity within one another. And that similarity is affected by experience when we no longer have the same relationship with our surroundings than we did before. When that occurs, there's a change that has occurred. Our attention is now more than just what we see every day, but more to what life is. In other words, the consciousness of someone asking a question, who am I, is very different than someone who's, asking what's on TV. They're different questions, different sensitivities. In other words, life is not supposed to be all about your comfort zone and how it's growing. It should be about, in a sense, the reason you are manifest. Why are you present? Why are you here? And you see, the reason you're here is one based on very natural laws, natural principles, but at the same time, there is the creation of a being who has choice to reconsider reality. And reconsiderations of reality begin with a sense of calm knowing of who you are at first and then exploring it. In other words, don't have your confidence in a certain idea of you and then when that idea changes, be overwhelmed. Go really see how far the rabbit hole goes for your life and see how much understanding there is present between human beings. Because I feel there are many people who feel they have great understanding of the world, but they don't know how to communicate it to others. In other words, after learning lessons a lot, we have a bunch of teachers around. Everyone is, in a sense, teacher of something which they can do effortlessly. We're, in a sense, teaching life how to be effortless by realizing where it had started its effort from. If you start your effort towards life, in other words, the way you're approaching life, based on how you were immediately programmed, there's not that much choice. You must find that space within yourself that you can observe any idea. Guys, the stories from Indian ancient philosophy are amazing stories. Go get comfortable with them. Go read them and see what they're about. Let them expand your knowing of metaphors. And just simply see how back in the day, there's this story, and this story was a story that came to me when I was actually exploring the idea of karma. And not a lot of people know what karma is, and if you don't, karma is in essence what you deserve right now in the moment and why you deserve it. So in other words, the reason of why you deserve what you're getting in the moment. And you see that it all depends on what you're putting in the search box, what you're putting in Google that suggests the results you're going to find. And you have asked the question, but now I'm saying look at that question again. In other words, suddenly go into this greater area of exploration and understanding what a new answer is. A new answer can be a new view of the same solution to a problem. It doesn't mean the problem has to change. In other words, we're all wondering why we're alive. That is the fundamental problem. But we see that because we're a part of it, we can't see the full of it, and hence, to have a full experience means to not work with an intelligence that is considering life separately. To work with an intelligence that is considering life more collectively. Collectively. Guys, that means, in a sense, the benefits of teamwork, of human communication to share. It's fascinating, because when you think about human consciousness, you see that it's a very firm column on certain views. In other words, we believe the material universe is this. But once you observe the material universe, you see that the greatest flexibilities of it are perceived in your own vision, in your own imagination, in your own mind. In other words, guys, unfortunately, our conditioning has made us robotic a little bit. And I want to break that sense of roboticness, even though I'm probably going to spend my life expanding areas of our, technology. But in essence, what I'm saying is that, you see, uncertainty in your life means you are not aware of what is certain right now. And you need to be aware of what is certain. Because once you find the certainty, that's when your presence is found. That's when your presence is different. That's when you walk in a room and people feel different regardless of whatever. It's because your state of being changes. I am telling you guys, my state of being is so different than a couple years ago who I was. And states of being change in different degrees. In other words, sometimes states of being is your hard work resulting into your change of process into a better change. But at the same time, it's slow. Some people want faster change. And you realize fast change means a detachment with thoughts of certainty. So in a sense, you instantaneously find that layer of uncertainty, that platform of uncertainty where every certainty was structured on, and you let your mind receive that moment transparently to see anything. And then your awareness to your other bodies comes back. Because if the child who is struggling in his endeavor does not let the parent help it out, it's going to get tired and eventually the parent will help it out. So what I mean is that we need to be honest with ourselves so we realize that life is about how you communicate with it, how you see it, what your vision, the depth of your vision. And you see that the deeper your depth of vision, the more you have looked at ideas that have certain meanings, certain solid meanings, and the more you look at it and you discover a more fluid self, then you can see that the human exploration is more than ideals. It is more than many things because you're responsible to many dimensions of existence. What that means is that people have a responsibility to themselves. They shave themselves, they clean themselves, but when it comes to the environment, they might throw all their trash on the ground. What that means is that you are working with a responsibility level to a dimension of consciousness that only acknowledges your body to be more important than the environment. You see, guys, the environment is a part of you. You cannot avoid it. You cannot try to change the things that you are perceiving. You must only realign yourself to discover that the discovery is being done by a greater vision, and the intelligence of that is not limited to any idea that humankind has had or will have. In other words, we're becoming sensitive to our experience of the moment in which we are seeking. In other words, what me and you are doing is we're observing the seeker. And the seeker is found to be present within any moment. Because you see, when we seek for truth, we are saying, how creative are we in our explanations? And in a sense, you don't want a creative explanation, you want no explanation, because the explanations are creating the individuation in the first place. So when man began to speak, he also created a problem which he later had to fix. What that means is that there are certain levels of contemplation one must reach to become, in a sense, fixtures in their own evolution. Because man is able right now to conceive greater ideas than himself and transform his image and move towards them. That is no little thing. When you see that the universe is looking, everything is important. Every act is important. When you perceive that within your moment of existence, the whole cosmos is observing your action. And your action is, in a sense, energized and it's present to you by the presence of everything else. So if I am choosing to consider you separately, that's based on preference of your being and your consciousness and what you're here to do. What that means is that not everyone is meant to go towards meditation and get enlightened. I'm not talking to every person in the world, even though I think it would benefit everyone if everyone heard it. But at the same time, the way I'm talking is about understanding that there's certain natural balances. I mean, that's what I understood at first. Because guys, I was very stuck into personalities that thought they had to live life in a certain way. Everyone does at some point. But what I guess is my maturity through the experience I've gone through is that when I amplified the amount of attention and alertness I have to all the ideas that I receive within a year, I understand combinations of accessing my ideas very newly. What that means is, once you learn how to reapproach yourself, you're never trapped in the past or stuck in the future. You're present to move on with an experience of all. In other words, why the separate consciousness when there was one consciousness to consider a platform for the separation? And these ideas come from the depth of me. And everyone has their own deep questions. Your questions might not be about me. In other words, the scientist may school any person who doesn't know science. But at the same time, the scientist must also continue going to school. You need to continuously update your system. And we see that is the thing about life. It is about how much are we updating our thoughts and our mentalities, our mindsets. How many times are our mindsets being reset? And back in the day, in these sacred hymns and, in very deep biblical or at the same time mystical texts, there was a lot of talk on rebirth and resurrection. And what does resurrection mean when everyone is alive and they die? Resurrection means reappearance, represence. In other words, the breaking of the illusion. And what that means is that once you see, let's say your whole my name, I was given the name Amin. And it's a name I really like. I've never had any problems with it, even though at times I found it to, I've had different feelings about the name people have as they continue on. But then you see why the name was chosen. And you see that there's no reason it was chosen. And you see based on that your name is the first idea that is constantly being communicated to you. And you realize people are acknowledging your name. And if you don't let people acknowledge, if you're not aware that when people are acknowledging your name, they should acknowledge your life, your presence, you should communicate that. In other words, be confident and communicate to everyone clearly how you perceive certain things so there is no confusion between you and others. In other words, I find the people who have a real sense of the things that I'm looking at, we have better communication. And reality means reality observation. In other words, if you want to view many different senses of what is real in a very recollective sense during meditative practice or even speech, then that is too its own method. In other words, you see, guys, human ability to talk about the stuff I'm talking about is simply human beings getting together to find their greater answers to their greater problems. We need to have this mindset. In other words, every kid must be inspired to realize that, first of all, they are an answer. All children must understand they are an answer to a problem only their eyes will be able to recognize and influence. So, in a sense, nobody needs to be born thinking they are incomplete. You're actually very complete. You're very connected. But you must also learn to work with templates of reality that are fixed. What that means is that it doesn't matter how much you like the way your imagination flows based on your own creativity. It's more about how much able are you also to receive the template of a real reality. Guys, let me tell you, when depth breaks you, it in a sense lets you free to absorb any moment of experience. When I say absorb any moment of experience, the only way you can truly understand what I'm saying is by, in a sense, pausing all these thought streams that are going in your mind. You see, guys, your emotions are, in a sense, the, result of different thoughts in a certain story in your mind, creating a certain setting for you. And so you see that reality is really about multidimensional communication. And humanity needs to learn about multidimensional communication before they can communicate with the true avatars of the unknown. Before Krishna and Christ and, any other prophet who left comes back, there needs to be an awareness of multidimensional observance, co-creation, and exploration, and communication. You master these for yourself, you go explore this, and you will actually have more real insight. Because what you want your knowledge to be is to be real for you. So when people ask you, regardless, you've just gone through the experience, you know how it's done. And I realize that's certainty. Because you realize you can't get certainty from anyone else other than yourself. And what that means is you must allow yourself to be a better version of yourself. If you're not allowing it, God, then, the gods are, the writers are breaking their own pencils. No, you must write swiftly. You must write calmly, intuitively, knowingly, and in a sense, very comfortably. You know? Guys, you choose your level of comfort with your experience. So let me tell you this story as an inspiration. It's an Eastern Indian story. And I believe it was about the karma thing, which I was talking about earlier. So now, I want you to see, back in the day, there were enlightened beings. Indian culture and the way I've been introduced to it was not the same as you see now. In other words, kids being born in this generation might have trouble understanding how real it could be. But back then, people had experiences which were more than human form. You know, it's as if when, let's say, God pushed off Eden, you know, for eating the apple, and that decline in hierarchy, there were many layers to that hierarchy up to God. So what we realize is that stories at times may capture all our values, but at times they don't. So there's this very enlightened master, let's say. And he's a guru, he's a wise man, he's one who's seen himself through the eyes of God, which is everything that's alive, and many, many deep understandings of consciousness are with him. Let's say he's a realized man. A realized man means there's a sense of innate, unknown, and unspeakable certainty that is the knowing to all questions. So it's a presence thing. So the enlightened being, the realized person has a different presence because there's a different awareness and attention to the life process and the moment. Now, this enlightened guru is a very enlightened man, and you know, he's helped many people be realized, and he's walking alone, and he would walk in nature alone, and he was a very calm and peaceful guy, you know. Like I probably could have gotten along with him. And we see that this guru, and he's, you know, passing between one force to the other. Just like, let's see, people will come to me if necessary. At the same time, I want to see where life takes me. So the wild man is going on a wild journey of life to see what comes up. And as the wild man is walking, this enlightened guru goes to a place where he goes to this new territory in a new empire, and he doesn't know it, but he's just in that forest. And suddenly the queen somehow, based on other people telling him about this guru, realizes the guy's there. So the queen, like, you know, just kind of like quietly escapes the palace to go see this guru in the forest after, let's say, people, I don't know, somehow they find the guru, right? The queen finds the guru. When the queen finds the guru's sitting on a piece of stone, and the queen is like very sly and trying to like escape, and he's like, oh my God, guru, tell me about life, I feel trapped, you know, something like that. And the guru starts saying some stuff to the woman, but unfortunately there's a spy in the corner following the woman, and the spy sees the woman talking to this guy. And the spy goes to the king and says, yes, she is alone in the forest with some man, right? And the king's anger and rage instantaneously calls the executioner, and they get this guy. They capture this guy, but the way they execution it is with a very inhumane amount of hate from the king. So how the king tells this enlightened person to be executed is, this is a story, by the way, take it as a story, you know, and I'm assuming that you can handle the depth and the imagery I speak of, so be comfort, you know, just maintain your comfort. And now in the story, they bring this guru and they place him on the ground with his hands down, and they tie his hands, right, tie his body. And as they've tied his body on the ground, they are, in a sense, after every hour, cutting bits of his body, you know, just cutting its bits. And it's a very grotesque type of thing I don't want to get into, but pretty much, but they see that this man does not even cry, does not scream, does not say anything, and is very gentle. It's crazy. It's as if he's dying, he's being torn into pieces, but there's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing, he's very comfortably and peaceful, and it's as if like he's sleeping comfortably, and this is happening to his body. And that's when the king starts to hear the tears of the queen, which is telling the king to stop, right? And what that means is the point of the story is coming from an unknown voice, and the unknown voice says that the moral is that everything is connected. All moments are connected. There's a relevance, there's a value in the landscape of your conception, right? In other words, the design has patterns in cyclical behavior of what must happen and what must not. What must not. Similar to how you feel right now, and this is an energetic combination, eventually you will reach a point in your life where you will deteriorate in this energy combination and be another energy combination. It doesn't mean your awareness is going to die with your body. It doesn't mean that when you close your eyes, there's a darkness that you cannot think anymore about. In a sense, it is a different atmosphere, because once you are, in a sense, this is my experience and my own observations of it. I really haven't read enough of other people's work to compare it to anything, but I could tell you about what I know, is that there's a level where when we are being observant of ourselves as the observer to the object of observance, when we are in the experience of the observer, there's a sense of silence and stillness there that is not anything. It is a very selfless experience. So when you come through a selfless experience, the mind of man begins to understand its ability to coordinate and, in a sense, push itself towards a certain platform of reality experience. What that means is that your most immediate thoughts begin to be looked at by your internal sense of observance when you're, let's say, meditating or doing something like that. And so you need to understand that it is not about karma, but more about the fact that why is the lion thinking like a sheep? And why does the lion have to be in the condition where it feels it's a sheep? Why do you feel powerless? And that's the thing, questions you need to ask yourself, you know? Suddenly test yourself in your understanding. Just sit down and write your understanding of the world and see what it is and be like, gosh, it could be more than that, you know, and just go explore yourself. Because I see it's not about promoting static truths. We want dynamic participation with life. What that means is I'm seeing, gosh, it's the quality, it's the reception point of man that is making the ideas. It's as if we're not catching the ball properly. In other words, the ideas that are coming to describe man, in other words, the energy that is defining man to himself, needs to be communicated much more properly with a better coordination. In other words, the combination of our attention to our conscious and unconscious, let's say, relationship is not enough. We must see the eyes that continue to be open when we are, you know, getting ready to go to bed, and even during sleep, and even during nothingness, and even during the conscious morning, right? Trust me, you are a multi-dimensional presence, and the sense of intelligence you have of how your consciousness and how the flow of your ideas is working is based on your own confusion about it. In other words, you show how confused are you of the ladder, because what some people understand a ladder is found to climb, to simply go and explore what's over the wall. But there are some people who actually are just stuck in wondering if it's a ladder or not. You're questioning whether you need to be more active in your life or not, and I'm telling you, be more active. And being more active doesn't mean getting a job and doing what everyone else is, in a sense, doing, and that's meaningful to you. You know, no, it's about your ability to explore any idea that comes to you throughout the day and to understand these experiences. Guys, because you think roller coasters are fun, trust me, with a sensitivity to conscious experience, an idea will come to you and you will see all life, in a sense, going towards the one eye that is perceiving it. And when I say one eye, I'm not talking about some esoteric nonsense, which is a story based on imagery. Guys, I am asking questions in the context of nothingness. I am, in a sense, telling you that the veil could always be pushed off. But you must understand that as you are pushing off the veil, and what the veil is the duality of life, as you're pushing off the separation, you must not throw it away. You must actually be 100% observant of its infinite destruction and constructive potentials, let's say. Because I know that our presence is more than how it is now. And I see that, and after some point, you can even see the advancement. What that means is that if you see one moment of truth now, you would see that moment of truth both in your past and in your future. And you realize the greatest moment and the only truth that is found now is simply that you're aware, but everything else changes. So your awareness to change, and that is a certainty to every human experience. But at the same time, you're also this infinite potential to keep observing yourself. You know? And I'm telling you, think of how you would approach life, how you would work in life if you knew that your mind on one level of chemistry, which is your normal day, shows this level of reality, and in your outer dream state suddenly shows a new fabric of this which you can experience. So what does that mean? Why are we ignorant of what imagination is? Why are we ignorant of what other life forms are? You see, we need kind teachers more than we need any type of teacher. It doesn't matter what kind of teacher you are. Just know that if you're teaching a child to be kind, you're helping build a kinder world. And kindness means tolerance, patience, and ability to understand all things. In other words, you don't want to just be someone who understands one dimension of life and doesn't. So go to the core of your understanding. If you feel you have problems you don't know the answers to, well guys, it's the platform. You got to change your platform. What that means is you got to look at your truths. Look at your most simplest truths and observe and see how much they're serving you. Because we've all heard conversations which we could never remember. So we must value our moments. You see, what I can contribute through my voice is simply understanding to what I perceive life to be. And in a sense that means that I will be presenting many understandings and I will be communicating many different types of human presence, but how the stillness through it. And that's not a very easy thing, but I think somehow I'm prepared for it. You know, it's very hard, but I've had many people tell me things about my life. I've had people directly tell me about its physical qualities, and I've had people tell me about its non-physical qualities, and I've had thought streams where I've suddenly had these, I don't want to say conversations, but in a sense, very powerful self-analysis, which I've understood to be more than just an identity-based thing. In other words, I've handled some of my problems with an intelligence that is working based on more than dualistic analysis. It's a very different thing. So what I mean is that I find myself first to be a communicator of life. And to be able to communicate life as the moment. Because that is what is not deceiving. In other words, what is Mr.Within? You know? There is no, in a sense, person who can accuse a mask. You cannot accuse a mask. And that's what we're saying. Don't accuse. If you're believing in something very firmly, you're accepting the mask, and you need to be aware to the different layerings of your life, you know? Because consciousness becomes a multi-layered experience where the worst thing can happen and you can be fine with it. So what interested me from a young age is how can one walk through the fire? Because we understand we're all suffering. We're understanding everyone is walking in a sense to their grave, and it's not a hard thing, it's not a bad thing, but it's something to acknowledge. We don't want to ignore the harshness of life. We don't want to ignore the softness of life. We want to see it fully. And compassionate methodology is always intelligent enough to embrace a lot of life. What that means is that if you, regardless of the criminal or the judged, self-judged person you are, you need to begin to understand that suddenly you have the choice to, if you suddenly behaved kindly to everyone around you throughout a day, you would not feel guilty. Trust me, try it. I've tried excessive amounts of being compassionate and kind, and I've observed how my behavior and mentality has changed, and also the mentality of others. So You don't have to just be concerned, responsible about how you're behaving in front of yourself, but how you're behaving in front of others is important. Because you don't want to disturb people whose realities are naturally growing. In other words, you don't want to, you know, block the light of flowers naturally meant to grow. Everyone in this life is a contributing moment to existential expansion of any area of consciousness. So feel first comfortable that you are achieving your purpose and you are, in a sense, on track. You're not lost. You're not behind. Physical reality and your observance of it creates your mentality, which then can also be observed to be a greater presence, which we will very vaguely call as life, as life or love. In other words, if someone tells me life is love or life is life, I will know that they have understood some things people who are saying is life is this formula or this equation have not. And it is how serious you're being with yourself. How serious are you being with yourself? Guys, that is a freeing question. Ask yourself. And if you feel you're being too serious or you're not being too serious, well, understand, it matters to you. So you need to explore you. You need to listen to the immediate wisdom that is accessible by you. In other words, don't just hear my talks, which are sharing wisdom. Go talk to your parents. Go talk to old people. Go talk to young people. Go talk to things that don't even have voices. In other words, don't even talk. Just go and be present with other life forms. Experience, for example, swimming. Experience how you're when you're eating food. And understand your sensitivity is suggesting how much attention you have to even receiving the great things in life. Because trust me, it's like an all-you-can-eat free buffet could be right beside you and you're stuck eating your own dry bread. You know, you don't need to eat your own dry bread, but if you expand your vision, you can see the all-you-can-eat buffet. And I'm not talking about desires and reaching your wants and stuff. I'm talking about what you're meant to be here for. In other words, the more meaning you can see in your life, the more meaningful your life becomes. So in other words, how can you see more meaning? By being more observant. By, as how David Lynch has beautifully said, you need to change the golf ball, not into a bowling ball, but into an ever-expanding unknown moment of learning. You see, guys, some people, everyone has a desire if you're in a physical life process. You have a desire to be physical naturally. So you don't need to ask a lot of external questions by changing external conditions. You actually need to ask the most immediate internal question that why am I in this place? Why am I in this condition? And you need to start anew. And trust me, that is the beauty of the blank page. Put a blank piece of paper in front of you and simply write your understanding of karma. And you see that if you're using a pencil, you can always erase it. If you're using a pen, you can always cross it out. And if you cannot change what you've written on the paper, you can always get rid of the paper. And that's what I'm saying, guys. You can always re-observe yourself in a sense of freedom that can do anything infinitely. So have this ability and awareness with you. Life is meant to be lived with a joyful observance of what is even quality of experience. So become known to yourself. Become your greatest revelation. Don't let just Jesus, for example, be your greatest revelation, Buddha to be your greatest revelation, Krishna. Go see you. Because before you can have your attention on philosophy and a lot of logical interpretation based on other human form, your attention is on ideas. You must first see where the spotlight is and then judge space and time. If you've been conditioned in a system that is speaking about things very objectively, then of course you need objective expectations to be certain. But if your conditioning has worn off because you're living with different views, your results will be different. In other words, the lucky person, there's different types of lucky people, guys. There are people who don't even think about luck and suddenly some good thing happens and their friends say, oh man, you're so lucky, you know? And there are people who constantly say, yeah, man, I'm lucky, bro. I'm so lucky. And they keep getting lucky. But at the same time, they see that the more they play the game with themselves, the more they lose it. Because trust me, after you've been a winner, after you faked victory, you're going to also experience loss. Because things are dualistic, double-sided. In other words, what comes up must come down. What comes down must look up. You are the refreshment to your own way of thinking. You think newly. Think new and, in a sense, perceive the wisdom in your presence. Perceive the existence and the imagery and the collective intelligence that is your being. And gratefulness simply becomes the simplest thing you can do. Because it's much more in a land of infinite potential. Because eternity never promises limitation. Thank you.